The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Welcome to this week's episode of The Stack, where we focus on people, business, and technology. Today's topic hits right at the core of what every MSP should be thinking about: email security. It's no secret that email is still the number one attack vector for businesses, but the way we defend against email threats has changed, and it's changing fast. So, in today's episode titled The Death of Email Gateway, the death of the email gateway, we're going to walk through what this really means, and we're going to talk about the future and what that looks like. And we've got a fantastic guest that's going to be right in the middle of this evolution. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest. We have David Meister. How you doing today, David?
I'm doing well, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to have you here on the show. You are the head of MSP and MSSP email security for Checkpoint. That is right?
That's correct.
And so how long have you been with Checkpoint?
So I've been with Checkpoint, actually celebrated my 3-year anniversary about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. And of course, you have that Australian accent, but you live here in the United States.
That's right. So when I joined Checkpoint, Checkpoint made an acquisition of an organization called Avanan, which is where the email security product came from. So I joined a couple of months after the acquisition in Australia to start the Asia Pacific region for email security for Checkpoint. I did that for probably about 9 months. We had a lot of great growth, but then there was an opportunity to step in and run the global MSP team, which I jumped at with very, very quickly, because my entire background prior to coming to the dark side of working for a vendor was working for MSPs. So I started off.
Nice.
I started off as a network engineer at the start of my career. I then started running network teams, ran a NOC, and then I kind of I got pulled into a sales meeting one day with one of our top BDMs, and I watched what he did, and I thought, man, I can do what you do so much better. And so then I decided to make the move over to sales, and then was doing sales for MSPs, then started running a large sales team, was involved with some acquisitions of MSPs, ran go-to-market for a relatively large MSP in Australia, and then saw an opportunity to shift over to the vendor side. And I was a little bit hesitant making that jump, but when I got to kind of fiddle with the tech a bit, I got convinced and made the jump.
Yeah. Well, no, the thing that I love about hearing stories like that of going from the MSP world to the vendor world is just, I mean, the ins and outs, and, the value that you can provide to MSPs as you're in front of them talking about the solutions that you have to offer. I mean, it's just invaluable, right?
Absolutely. And it's given us a good opportunity as we've developed the program, because we've been through a very, very rapid growth over the last 2.5 years. And everything, it's been good because every decision that we've made around how we structure the program, what we're delivering to MSPs, how we structure the pricing and the commercial aspect of it, it's all been with MSPs in the forefront of our minds. Like I had a laundry list of things when I joined where I was like, this is what vendors used to do, which drove me insane. I'm not going to do these things. So there's like a blacklist of things I'm not to do based off my experience. And then we've been able to see, being that Checkpoint was a bit of a later player in the MSP market to the game, we're able to see what some other vendors did that kind of rubbed MSPs the wrong way, and we kind of use them as signposts of things to avoid.
That's awesome. And, anytime that we can, turn that negative into a positive and, look for opportunities to make things better is great. And I think MSPs appreciate that. And so let's jump into, our top headline here. Now, one of the things that you have said is that the email gateway is dead. And obviously that's a bold statement, but what do you exactly mean by that? And why should MSPs care?
Well, it's a change in tech that we've got that's been largely driven by the adoption of cloud-based email. So if you think about the email security industry as a whole, email security solutions, the traditional way that we've been doing it for 20 plus years. I think we must be getting close to 3 decades now, where
Yeah.
the late 90s, early 2000s, you had these secure email gateways that came out. And a lot of the organizations who are still providing them today were the original ones who created them back then. And what they were designed for was you had on-prem mail servers. You could, as
Right.
an IT admin, I could go to my Exchange server in the server room on a Friday night. I could pat it on the head. I could pray over it that it wouldn't go down over the weekend, so I wouldn't have to come in and deal with the problem. But over the last 10 years, we've seen this such a massive migration away from on-prem email into 365, into Google Workspace. But the style of security for cloud-based email has largely stayed the same. So the way you would set up a secure email gateway is you would change an MX record so that the mail would flow to the gateway, then it would go to the Exchange server. And when organizations moved to the cloud, they took that same approach where the MX records would point to a gateway, generally a hosted gateway, and then it'll scan it and push it into 365 or Google Workspace. That architecture is trying to adopt a legacy architecture to a modern style of doing email security. And it introduced a number of different challenges that we've been seeing for a number of years now. Everything from only protecting on inbound emails, not protecting on internal emails, being able to bypass the gateway by sending an email to the on Microsoft domain to get around the gateway. And largely gateways were pattern-based, looking for known threats and not utilizing some of the newer information we have with large language models and with AI. And so we've seen this shift where they've done a great job historically at anti-malware and at anti-spam, but modern phishing attacks haven't really cut it. They haven't really cut it in being able to prevent those attacks. And so the
Yeah.
market as a whole, and the reason I say that the gateway is dead, the market as a whole is making a massive shift away from using secure email gateways. And for MSPs, that's important because email security is one of those things where it might only be a small cost of your overall cybersecurity stack, but it's probably one of the most visible parts of your service. Because if the CEO gets phished, you're going to know
Right.
about it straight away. And we've seen, and I experienced this when I was working for an MSP, not being able to stop phishing emails is such a quick way to lose a customer. Such a quick way. And a lot of it's driven by the fact that these gateways aren't the right way to approach it. So this shift in the industry has been going on for a while now. In fact, Forrester came out, I think it was in 2021, in their enterprise wave for email security, and said that secure email gateways, or SEGs, are slowly becoming dinosaurs. And then we've seen this shift where even Gartner came out a couple of years ago and said there needs to be a strategic shift in how we secure this communication channel. So we've started to see this big uplift in what we refer to as API-based email security, where you'll see all these different organizations who, instead of using a gateway where you need to change MX records, they'll use the Microsoft Graph API to be able to secure email. And even some of the legacy vendors in Proofpoint and Mimecast and Barracuda have started investing in API-based email security, because the gateways nowadays are only the right architecture for an on-prem mail server rather than cloud-based email.
Yeah. And I mean, it is amazing from a security perspective, how much has changed since those last 20, 30 years that you referenced. I mean, in those days, I mean, our biggest concern was, not sending, maybe some sensitive financial information to the entire company, right? I mean, that was the security we were concerned about. And then obviously it's just progressed, when we take a look at, bad actors being able to get into the environment, and you just, I mean, it's obviously night and day difference. And the threats that we are facing on a daily basis are nonstop. And so when we take a look at that, it feels like we're entering a new era where attackers are using generative AI to write phishing emails that sound completely legit. And they look like they're coming from the CEO or your CPA. How exactly are cyber criminals using AI to bypass those, I guess we'll say, traditional email filters that MSPs are relying on?
Yeah, great question. A lot of it comes down to the way that those traditional gateways or those legacy gateways have been protecting it. So a lot of the times they'll look at, some of the intelligence of where's the IP coming from. It could be simple things like, does the name match for the domain where it's coming from? Simple things like that. But the barrier to entry for malicious actors to try and phish somebody has become significantly lower with the introduction of AI tools like ChatGPT or similar styles of tools that you can get on the dark web. Because if I'm a malicious actor, I don't need to have good command of a language to be able to write a convincing phishing email anymore. And so I
Right.
can create something. I can tell a chat GPT like tool to generate an email for me, and I can tell it which language to generate it from. Because those legacy gateways are also relying on things like DKIM and DMARC, maybe some of the more modern ones, there's still ways to get around it as well. So if I'm a malicious actor and I want to go and phish somebody, I can establish a relationship with them and then try and phish them. So one of the attacks that we see quite regularly is that we'll have somebody reach out. Maybe they've created an account using Gmail, maybe they've created an account using Hotmail, and they're sending an email out that has no malicious attachments, no malicious links, but they're just trying to establish a relationship so they can communicate. We're then seeing a follow-through phishing attempt where maybe they're trying to establish that relationship and they send a phishing link via mobile. Or maybe once they've established that relationship, the email security platform or the gateway isn't going to block that because they're already communicating back and forth. Then they're going to send the malicious payload, be that in a link, be that in a QR code, be that in a link or a QR code inside of an attachment, be that in a link or a QR code which has 5 or 7 different redirects, which then eventually arrives at the malicious link, or even send a link through that's not malicious that an hour after it's been sent, it gets changed to become malicious. So we're seeing all these different types of things that have become so much easier because of the introduction of AI. And what we've had to do on the email security side to try and prevent it is use AI ourselves to be able to understand the intent behind the emails being sent.
Okay.
And so where a traditional gateway will look at all of those indicators, DKIM, DMARC, where the IP is coming from, the display name versus the email, what we do with AI is the AI will actually read the body of the email, and it'll determine which parts of the body are malicious and which parts are not. And actually, in our platform, we'll actually highlight that to people to say, hey, look, this paragraph or this specific sentence in a paragraph, that's where they're trying to phish you. And it's a balancing act of understanding what is malicious and what's not. So I'll give you an example of some of the things that we've trained our AI on.
Yeah.
When we see a Bitcoin address in a email in a business setting, 97% of the time, it's going to be malicious. So if we were using a gateway, we could set up a block list to say, look, if an email is coming through and it's got a crypto address, block it. Just don't let it through.
Sure.
But on the other side of it, 3% of the time, when there is a Google Drive link inside of an email in a business setting, that email is malicious. So 97% of the time, it's actually clean. So if I was relying on traditional patterns and allowing block lists like I do with the gateway, I'm either going to be letting that through, or I'm going to try and block every single email with a Google Drive link in it.
Right.
So this is where you need to have other things inside the email that and where we use AI to determine what else is malicious. So this is where we start looking at the actual text of the email. This is where AI is able to understand the intent. The AI is able to look at something called stylometry to understand if the style of the writing is in line with where it's claiming to be from, and a number of other indicators that it's continually learning to be able to determine if that is malicious or not. So it's a much more balanced approach based off the holistic email, the whole email, rather than just, hey, this has a crypto address, or hey, this has a Google Drive address.
Yeah. And so I guess if the legacy gateway isn't catching all these AI generated threats, what is that alternative?
So that's where we come through to NextGen email security. This is where Gartner has changed its wording on it. I think at the moment they're calling it an ICES, or an integrated cloud email security. These are platforms that actually integrate into the cloud email platform itself. So be that 365 or Google Workspace. They integrate using the Graph API from Microsoft, and because it sits inside of the environment, it allows it to make decisions based on everything that's going on inside the 365 environment. So I'll give you an example with our tool and with business email compromise. Business email compromise could just be phishing, but it also could be a lot of other things as well. And so because we're plugged in directly into the Microsoft environment, when we plug in, we go back over the metadata of that user for the last 13 months to be able to understand who they communicate with, what times they communicate, what times they log in from, where they log in from, to be able to establish a social graph baseline. Then the AI is able to work off that. And on top of that, what we're actually doing is that we're continually monitoring the behaviors inside of 365. So, for example, if somebody starts trying to send malicious emails, if somebody logs in from a geo-suspicious location, somebody sends an email from here in Utah, where I am, and then they send an email 30 seconds later from Sydney or from Turkey or something like that, we're going to flag those events because we're actually inside the environment. We're not just sitting outside on the perimeter. We're looking at things as they're coming in. And because we're in that, we're able to look at not just the incoming emails, but we're able to look at the outbound, and we're able to look at the internal emails as well. And one of the unique things with Checkpoint is that we've actually got a patent on the ability to prevent inside, which actually allows us to stop that from getting to the inbox in the first place.
So, when we take a look at what MSPs do on a daily basis, when an MSP is evaluating a modern email security platform, what kind of tips would you give that they should be looking out for and watching for?
Great question. The first thing is to understand your current situation. I think one of the things that gets overlooked when thinking about email security is the actual overall cost of ownership. And the reason I say that is that email, when there's an expectation that the gateways are going to miss things. We all understand that. But every email that gets missed, how much time does that mean for your security operations center or for your help desk to actually spend? So you can go, if you want a cheap email security tool, you can go get freeware. You can go get freeware on the internet and you can deploy something. But how much time do you actually spend managing it? How much time do you actually spend deploying it? How much time do you spend investigating malicious threats? That's where I would start, because then you've got an understanding of how good or bad your current situation is. From there, what I would recommend looking at is the entire email security picture. So are you just looking to stop phishing emails? Or do you want to make sure you're preventing phishing, malware, spam, account compromise? What are you doing around security awareness training? Do you have a DMARC tool? Do you need archiving? Because some MSPs do, some MSPs don't. So having a look at that holistic picture and understanding how much of that you can get into a single platform versus how much of it you need to bundle multiple point products together. And again, keeping in mind that overall cost of ownership from a setup, from a deployment, from a management point of view, and really making sure that you are going to be addressing these modern threats.
What would you say some red flags are that ultimately screen legacy tech?
Changing MX records would be the number one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I experienced as an MSP, and this was actually one of the reasons why coming to Checkpoint was so attractive to me, was that when we would quote a security stack deployment, so we had email security built into a number of other products. We had endpoint security, remote access, dark web monitoring, and a few other things in our standard stack. And we had to quote 4 or 5 hours every single time we wanted to deploy email security, because we had to plan a change request. The change request had to go overnight because we had to change the MX records. The mail flow would stop for a couple of minutes as we were making these changes. It was a big barrier for us to be able to go sell. And it was just a frustrating point. I mean, I've been to so many MSP shows where I asked the room, I'm like, all right, please raise your hand if you enjoy doing MX record changes. And there'll usually be 1 or 2 people who'll jokingly put their hands up. But if you've got to do an MX record change, it's going to be legacy tech. The other thing to look at when you're using a gateway service, or if it's potentially legacies, see how often the product itself is actually updated. And the reason I say that is because if your vendor is an email vendor or any cybersecurity vendor that runs a different product for MSPs that they do for enterprise that maybe only gets updated every couple of months, that's not going to give you what you need as an MSP. You need something that's continually being updated for new threats, for new features, because the cyber industry and AI now particularly is progressing so quickly that you should be working with a product that's deploying new feature releases, addressing new threats multiple times every single month.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the sophistication of the bad actors, I mean, we used to think sophistication meant that their emails just looked more legit, like they were, it truly was coming from PayPal, or or this the social engineering, or the reverse, engineering. And when you incorporate AI into that, I mean, it's just mind blowing. And we're talking about hyperspeed, and we have to be moving at the same level and faster than the bad actors, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's kind of it's a bit of an AI arms race at the moment. Is that
Yeah.
you can't assume that the actors aren't using AI. Therefore, we need to know how to use it to stop what they're doing. And
Right.
there's so much of what they can do that the human, as humans, as we're looking at emails, particularly as busy humans, we're not going to be able to pick it up. Like we've seen, we've seen attacks where they, and we've seen this one for a number of years, where they'll take a link, and they'll use white text on a white background for the first part of the link. So it looks okay, but it's actually going to a malicious website. We've seen
Right.
redirects where people, it looks exactly like a Microsoft page. We've seen simple things like in the domain, it looks exactly right, but they've got a 0 instead of an O. Those types
Yeah.
of things, you're just not going to pick it up yourself. And
Yeah.
that AI is going to be very intelligent in the way that it's worded, and where it can actually put those threads, particularly with the fact that you can not just write an email so quickly, but you can use AI to generate a web page so quickly and things like that. That's where we've got to be at the forefront of how we are preventing, and having AI be able to read things and look for things that would take us way too long.
Yeah.
Is a key way of doing that. If you don't mind, I'll give you a real world example of this.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we worked with, we had a customer last year, a very large customer who, it was a very large global sporting event. I'll leave it at that. And they received a huge amount of political backlash, because of something specific they did. They had a huge amount of political backlash, so much so that they were receiving so many emails each day they couldn't work. Their emails were basically just shutting down because they were just getting hit constantly because this was a global visible event. Because we use AI in the platform, what we were able to do, instead of going and trying and blocking every single one of those, and think about this as an MSP, how much time it would take to, every time somebody sent you an abusive political message, to be able to
Right.
go and say, okay, block this address, block this address, block this address. You would need a team dedicated to it. All we had to do was go into our platform and tell the platform, if you receive any email, if any email comes in that is political in nature or has political bias, stop it. And so this sporting event wasn't able to work for a number of days because of just how much they were getting slammed. But then we
Mm.
went in, and within a couple of hours, they were able to go back to normal. And so the way that AI is able to do those types of things is a complete game changer. And as
Yeah.
MSPs and as vendors in the cybersecurity industry, we have to be at the forefront of that, because on the flip side, the malicious actors
Yeah.
are going to be using it as well.
I mean, we, many years ago, in my own MSP, we had a client that received an email that appeared to come from the owner of the business, who was out of town, and um, the bad actor bought a domain name that threw the letter L in front of their business name. Very subtle. The end users didn't notice it. Long story short, the bad actor got lazy in the process of removing, like, that letter L in the replies, and in some other aspects of the email, and somebody caught on to it. And I mean, and let's face it, we're all human. We make mistakes, and bad actors make mistakes. That was a red flag for this organization. But when you introduce AI and you're using AI, I mean, we're talking sophistication and a level of intelligence to overcome those mistakes that a human can do. And so it just increases the chances of organizations falling victim, because it is much more perfect and much more real than the errors that can come into play.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, and that's where the emphasis is on us to be able to keep up with it. I mean, it's funny you use that example. We've actually seen, similar when it comes to security awareness training, where we've seen admins who will create templates of potentially malicious emails and send them out, but then over time they get a little bit lazy and they're a little bit easier to pick, or they're just not as real because maybe the admin's a bit busy and they don't put enough effort into it. And so we actually released last month, we released our new security awareness training tool. And what we decided to do is, again, because AI is becoming so good, is that we've trained our tool to look at the real threats coming in and replicate them with AI and send them through to users, obviously not malicious, but as a way to train the users on what threats are coming through, because it's become so good now, and you can make it so real. And that human element of needing to create an email template that looks malicious, or if you're a malicious actor, keep up the same persona, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So let's just talk a little bit about business for a minute. Email security isn't just about protection. It's a service line. How can MSPs leverage AI-driven email security, not just protect their clients, but to increase their margins, to automate more, and at the end of the day, grow their business while securing their clients?
I think there's a bit of a and it's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. There's a bit of a misunderstanding in the market at the moment around how email security fits, and the reason is that because it's been around for so long, a lot of organizations don't see it as a big growth vector, but
Right.
it is the number one threat area, so it should be a big growth area for us. And a part of the reason is because it's difficult to set, like if it's legacy, it's difficult to set up. It doesn't necessarily cost, it doesn't necessarily catch anything, and it's actually not that sexy of a sell. And
Yeah.
so where the opportunity that we have with modern email security, because it's so easy to deploy, instead of, like, our product, for example, it takes 7 clicks to deploy. It takes about 30 seconds, 8 clicks if you've got a pop-up blocker. And you deploy it, the first 14 days are free, and you can deploy it with the existing legacy email security still in play, and you just leave it there and monitoring. We can then generate at the end of that, or during that, we can generate a full security checkup report that's got the MSP's branding on it, that'll show every single malicious email, DLP breach, spam email, phishing email, potential account compromises, all on this co-branded report to give to the end users. And because it's so easy to deploy, for a lot of our MSPs, it's become their fastest selling tool, and it's become a huge entrant to sale for them, because everybody understands email security. If it doesn't matter which persona you're selling to, if you go talk to them about being phished, everyone gets it because they get it at a personal level. And so you can go and lead with this tool, which then can pull through the rest of your cybersecurity stack with it. In fact, in 2024, across our MSPs, and we've got thousands of MSPs that we work with, when they ran out this proof of concept, which we call it a POC, where it takes 7 clicks to deploy, 8 clicks if you've got a pop-up blocker, we had an 87% conversion rate of customers
Wow.
from that POC to a paid license, just because there's the assumption that email security hasn't changed, but it's so different to what it
Right.
used to be, and it can be a big growth area. And then what you have the opportunity to do is to build services around that. And so knowing that email security is such a visible thing to the entire organization, including the C-suite, and in some cases, including the board, offering a managed email offering where you are doing monthly reporting, you're doing quarterly executive engagements, where you are doing security awareness testing, where you are turning on DLP and giving DLP reports to see who's sending out what information. That's really critical, and that's key. Another real world example, we had a customer, this is when I was in Australia, a large retail customer, and I got a phone call had a POC in play at the time, and we were running out the POC not just for protection on email, but we're doing a proof of concept. It was a part of our platform we protect on a collaboration suite, so Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, Box, Dropbox, Slack, and a few other tools, all as a part of our licensing. So I got a phone call from the IT manager, and he said, "Hey, look, we've got a feeling that the stores have been sharing passwords in between one another. And I'm just wondering, because you guys are connecting into our Teams environment, can you help us, like, figure out what's going on there?" So I jumped on a screen share with him, and we opened up the platform, and we were actually able to drill in and look for key phrases. So password, PW, those types of things. And we were actually able to pull up which stores and which user accounts were sending those phrases and the subsequent passwords between the different stores.
Yeah.
And then as an IT manager, he was able to go in and do that. And so when you start to think about those are the types of things that I can deliver as a service, that adds a huge amount of value. And again, email security being such a low-hanging fruit from a cybersecurity point of view, it's much easier to sell email security than trying to sell SOC or a SOAR or something like that. You can lead with email because it is such a quick sales cycle, and
Yeah.
then through your other products as it comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as we're working to wrap up, I know you guys have a number of special offers and resources available for MSPs to ultimately put it to the test. Can you elaborate a little bit more about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two that we've got for MSPs going at the moment. First of all, we do have an NFR offer. So if you want to come and try the product out, we do have 100 NFR licenses of our full product, which includes our security awareness training, our DMARC management and monitoring as well. But I would encourage you to go check it out because it does only take 7 clicks to set up. 8 clicks if you've got a pop-up blocker, about 30 seconds. We have a promo going. Deploy it for 14 days on either one of your customers or on yourself. Leave it in play for that 14 days in monitoring only. If we don't catch more malicious emails than your existing gateway, I will give you a PlayStation 5 for wasting your time.
Nice. I mean, you can't get any more of an attractive deal than that. I mean, what MSP doesn't want to have a PlayStation 5, in the back room there? So when in their downtime, right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
give it a try.
Yeah.
I will let you know that I haven't had somebody win it yet. So try me out. See if I'm
That's
full of it.
awesome. That is very cool. And and you guys also have you do have a demo program as well, right?
That's exactly right. So we are very, very MSP focused. So we've got a full MSP team who can help you with demos, who can help you with proof of concepts. We can help you with your first couple of sales through to your customers. Everything that we've done at Checkpoint over the last couple of years has been about on the MSP side has been hyper focused on developing out a program specific to MSP. So everything from our technical support team now is a dedicated MSP team, so you can bypass level 1 support. We've got dedicated R&D developers, we've got dedicated product managers, and we've got dedicated MSP marketing coming in as well, just because we understand that supporting an MSP is different to supporting your traditional channel reseller, and it's also different from supporting an end customer. So we've built that up specific to MSPs to try and give them what they need.
That is awesome. And I'm going to share your URL, checkpoint.com. I want to make sure that everybody checks you guys out there. Additionally, if you are on our everythingmsp.com website, you can search Checkpoint. We have links to be able to reach out to them directly. And with that being said, Dave, I want to thank you for your time. Very valuable conversation. As we know, AI is changing the game for both attackers and the defenders, and it's important that we emphasize that. And clearly, MSPs can't afford to be stuck outside with outdated tools, right?
That's exactly right.
Absolutely. Again, Dave, thank you so much for your time. For our audience, I want to thank you for being here today. Until next time, everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.